Neat Nation, happy Thursday. Glad to be back with you guys live for the third straight video. Last Thursday, did a live. Sunday night, I did a live in replace of the Monday video, which means you got bonus content because that thing was almost an hour talking about finished whiskeys. And I thought the content was pretty good. Now, the YouTube algorithm does not like the live videos as much as the usual pre-recorded, pre-proofed ones. That is what it is. It was fun to do, and it helped me get that video out. Tonight, we are without Brian again. Big thanks to everybody who contributed last week in blessing the Bikey family in the midst of everything they were going through. Brian's dad did pass away this week, which you guys know sucks. Just really, really sad. Passed away due to cancer. It was a while coming, but that doesn't necessarily make it a lot better. So Brian's still out, probably be out a couple more weeks. We'll see. But maybe send him a DM, let him know you're thinking about him, praying for him, maybe buy him another drink. But we'll definitely miss him for as long as he needs to be out, because no pressure. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. He did drop a video this week, which, more power to him. Sometimes you just need distraction, but talked about Jack Daniel's single barrel. So make sure, his link to his show is down in the show notes below. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already. Hard to segue from that, but we're going to do it anyway. Tonight, we have Nick Brady Maas, who you guys know is definitely an upper. When you need an upper, he's an upper. That guy, he'll light your fire. Entertaining dude, knows everything about whiskey, well-connected, great storyteller, immense energy. And he'll be joining us when he does. He said, let me tell you what he said. He said, trying to put the baby down. We'll be on, what did he say exactly? 8:15-ish, maybe earlier, but maybe 8:30. So we'll see. Whenever he jumps in here, I'm going to throw him up, and then we're going to go deep. We're going to go hard on rye whiskey, because while I know products, like what's out there generally, kind of how they taste, if I've been fortunate enough to try them, he knows how they're made, which is a leg up, I dare say. And, by and large, his project, Dancing Goat Distillery, still relatively unknown. I know Sealbox is going to be doing some picks even outside of us, which is fine. I do feel a little bit like left out. I know Take, many of you know who Take is, Jay something, forget his last name, but he writes for Whiskey Raiders now. He kind of got his start, and he's huge on Reddit. He did some picks with Dancing Goat, and I'm going to take all the credit. Not really. I actually didn't know they were doing picks till I saw somebody else do it. So I should probably give them credit. But I've been thrilled, as you know, to get to know what they're doing over there at Dancing Goat. And if you've been there, like Eric Sawyer has, you know that it's pretty cool. And you get to taste a lot of stuff. Like, I taste a lot at Starlight when we're there for a pick, but it's a toss-up. I'm not sure who I actually get to taste more whiskey with, Nick or the folks at Starlight. And as much as I like the folks at Starlight, Nick's kind of my favorite. Spoiler alert. Just don't at me. It is what it is. Let's talk about some bits. I mentioned I was going to be slow in sort of the rebuying, like getting back into this, and that I've been exploring some wines. While I did pick up some wine this week, I did not pick up any whiskey. Didn't buy any personally. I did get this in the mail. This is an unmarked bottle, a sample. I was surprised when I opened it, and it didn't even have a label on it. I'm not sure that's legal. But this is a sample from Ross and Squibb, MGP, Luxco, that family. This is Rossville Union 2020. That's what I've been sipping on. I'm either going to review this live or on Instagram or in a YouTube video. I'm not sure yet, but I tasted it a little bit last night and tasted it again this evening. Initial thoughts are it's pretty good. It's really spicy. really spicy. 7-year-old age statement this time with the Rossville Union release. I was not a fan. I had a taste of a previous release, maybe last year. I'm not sure. It's been out for a couple of years at least. Kind of a shelf turd, meaning that it's on the shelf. You can go get it whenever you want. It's barrel proof MGP, around 6 years old, 7. This one's age stated 7. Nose was nice. And it's fine. I want it to have more sweetness, even at its age. It's got some oak. The finish is dry and spicy. So I'm going to keep hitting it. And then at some point I'll go deep on it. But shout out again to Luxco for sending me some stuff. That's very nice of them. I appreciate that very much. I'll revisit what we talked about a little bit last week with Porkins. Shout out Porkins for joining me on the show. What a swell guy. I've come back to the Disco 7 a couple of times just to take little nip naps. And I mean, the verdict is I still like it. Still a fan of this whiskey, just not at the price. Like, it's a good whiskey that kind of tastes like bourbon mixed with light whiskey. I think that's a really great descriptor for it. It's got a great nose, but it's just not 120. If you're fortunate, 120. Certainly not $140 good. It's like, let me give you a price. I'm gonna see how much money this tastes like. $80. I'm gonna say it's $80 good. It's really nice on the front. Front is delicious. Finish is a little weaker. What are you all drinking tonight? We got 23 people in, which is good. We'll allow some people to trickle in as we wait for Nick. If he's not in by 8:15, I'm going to blow up his phone. Besides the fact that he's donating his time to Nation. Although we bought a bunch of Dancing Goat products between all of us, so maybe he's selling. Maybe that's what it is. So we won't give him a full break. But what are you guys drinking tonight? Let me know. Shout it out here. We've been trying to figure out, as soon as Brian is back in the swing of things, we got to work on our next pick and working on a special project for that one. Hoping to get New Riff, but also need to go ahead and put the stake in the fire for Woodinville. And then there was that malt whiskey distillery that I always forget, which is tragic. It's a bummer. That's out there. What is that? Somebody shouted out in the chat, the place that does source whiskey and malt whiskey and stuff. But would love to make a trip out to Washington, convince my wife that I have to do that. For work. That's probably not going to fly. I think she knows. I just want to go play golf and pick whiskey. We got Valiant Abello. I'm assuming that's pronounced, but Balcones Texas Rye. Chris drinking Old Forester 100. Nice. Eric sipping on Chardonnay with his mom-in-law. Dude, that's well played. I'm proud of you. I mean, like, way to like, I don't use this term lightly, but be a man. Sip on some Chardonnay with your mother-in-law. That's just a baller move. Super proud of you. Wilson dropping some Russell's 10 and EC Toasted. Cade mentioned this earlier. Chattanooga Founders. Interesting. I was reading about that on their website, and there's either a typo or they're aging that whiskey in, 650-gallon barrels? It's like, is it supposed to be 6 50-gallon barrels? After 3 to 4 years of primary and secondary aging, casks of Chattanooga's original 1816 recipe were moved into 650-gallon charred oak 1816 barrels. No idea what that means. I think they need to get a copywriter, a proofreader or something. Because 600, seriously? Okay. All right. Maybe. I'd like to see that thing. How big is that? Like, that's similar to like a Scotch Solera vat. Yeah, right. It's a really tall Solera style barrel. Cool. Pixar didn't happen, but I trust you. Just a little confusing to read online. It looks like a typo because that's not usual. Even the Limo Rye, which will be stoked to have Nick talk to us about. Limousine Rye from Dancing Goat. Their Solera is barrels that are like wired together. So it's sort of a unique Solera style versus like a massive vatted product. Porkins drinking homemade Brown-Forman Super Blend. Well, what goes into that, Porkins? I assume you've got probably some Jack, you got some Woodford, you got some Old Forester, but now I want to know what's in Porkins' secret Brown-Forman Super Blend. Kyle, is this a straight bourbon, this Starlight that you're drinking right now? All right. Well, while we wait, I'm going to go ahead and start riffing myself. We're going to talk a little bit about rye, as I mentioned, and I'm going to set the stage. He says he's going to be about 10 minutes. So if any of you need to go to the bathroom, now's a great time to do that. I just got a text from him. But what I wanted to do is Dancing Goat does primarily a 95.5 rye. That's MGP rye, right? And there's probably a reason for that. Like part of the reason is that they've sourced a lot of rye from MGP. Like that's how they actually built the Limousine Rye product. They started Solera aging MGP rye after aging it in used cooperage primarily, which is really interesting and unusual. But 95.5 MGP rye is all over the place right now. So I wanted Nick to talk about why he landed on that recipe versus standard like Kentucky style recipe. In order to help us warm up on what the profile is for standard MGP 95.5 rye, I'm actually going to go ahead and do this Rossville Union review live. Because I think it's a really, really good example of standard MGP profile. Michael Maas. Michael, I assume you're related to Nick. Drinking Limousine 6-year cast strength. Michael, did we meet? Are you Nick's dad? I'll feel really bad. I'm terrible with names. I've had to say that many times. The worst, absolute worst with names. I almost go into Trump voice there to say the worst. But very bad with names. So I apologize if that is you. But welcome to the channel. And if you're not at all related, because you have 2 S's on your name here, that's just a really fun coincidence because I haven't seen you in here before. Peter Braddock, what's up, man? Kyle says he is drinking a straight bourbon pick from Starlight. Michael Mendoza, this is really kind. New to your channel, but love it. Great looking bar. Thanks for the tour. Yeah, that was a fun video to make for sure. Also want to shout out Porkins actually on the hat. He said this is from the club that he's a member at. That's Golf Club, not like another kind of club. Anyway, it's from Washington, and he lives in Seattle. We learned that last week. So, and he sent me this pretty dank lid, which I enjoy. It's a nice flat bill style, which I'm a big flat bill guy. All right, let's get into this Rossville Union. I mentioned it's 7 years old. Proof on this is 58.6. MSRP $10 per year, $70. Didn't used to be $70. Is it $70 good? My initial gut, like spoiler alert, was no. The nose is nice, big candied citrus, like candied lemons, a little like rosy floral. I mentioned pepper on the finish on the palate is very pronounced. I know that already, so definitely spoiling here. The sweetness, like I expect more sweetness than I got on the palate based on the nose on this thing. Like it's lemon curd kind of vibes. And with that rose, it's nice. The nose is actually very good, very inviting, and I expect a decent amount from this particular whiskey. The front, I get like a touch of maple, just a touch. And then it dissipates. I get oak. I mentioned dry oak. It's just absolute loads of black pepper and all the citrus in the whole wide world. Like the citrus just carries throughout. And you're left with this kind of orange peel, kind of bitterness, which is not bad. I mean, as far as bitternesses go, if you're going to quantify bitterness, pretty workable. Oh, nice. Michael, what's up, man? This is Kyle, and I just finished a blind for his birthday. Kyle, is it your birthday? No, it was your birthday like yesterday or something. It's Kyle's birthday week, so shout out Kyle. Old Forester 1920 just beat out a Russell's Camp Nelson pick. So sad right now. Blinds work. 1920 is pretty good. It's been a long time since I've actually had a bottle of that, so I might have to bring it in and throw it up against a couple of things. It's like, rare breed of Russell's picks, as they tend to perform well. But thanks for the super chat. Let's see if I can pull out some more notes out of this Rossville Union batch. Yeah, $70 is just a hard price point for this, even though it's barrel proof, because there's so much 6 or 7 year MGP out there at barrel proof, and some of it for cheaper. Like I think of it's not going to be 7 until next year, but like the Pinhook verticals, like they're doing the vertical bourbon and rye, that's MGP stuff. So the 6 year this year, we'll have to see what it comes out at. But their other, that's been like in the 50 range, probably going to go up as it gets older. TBD. It's hot. I didn't really mention like anything on the heat wise. It's 117.2, so it's not exactly low proof, but it kicks a little bit. It's a fighter. Front is just like, this is a ride of a whiskey. In that, front's like nice and viscous, and makes me hopeful for the finish. And then I just run into an absolute brick wall that's painted to look like an orange or a lemon. I ran through a field of flowers and I got some maple syrup dripped over me, but I was running with my eyes closed. And then I ran into this brick wall that looked like an orange. So that's what happened. Overall, it's pretty good. And I think at $50 is much more of like, oh yeah, this is pretty good at 50. At 70, it's a bit of a stretch. And I'm just not at this point a big fan of what MGP is doing with their branding. Like, I don't like the Remus brand. I love the product. Big fan of Remus Repeal 4 and 5. You all know this. Remus 3 was also good, but the branding is a little wonky. And then their standard George Remus, like the small batch product, I think that branding is tough. It's a tough scene for sure. Like, why would you name your product after a bootlegger? Like, that's illegal. This is not a good reputation, right? But whatever. Like, they didn't ask me for branding advice. The Rossville Union, I don't know the story behind that brand. Let me see if they say anything. Rossville Union features a medley. Yeah, they don't talk about nothing about the name. Standard 94 proof Rossville Union is $40. I've seen a couple store picks of this, which, would be a fun pick experience, I'm sure. Go to MGP. Speaking of MGP, Nick has been to MGP a lot. I can't ask him about it, though, because he's not here yet. But I'm gutting it out for him. I'm going to text him back. Ready for you whenever. Comparing the Rossville Union with some of the stuff that I've had from Dance and Go, like I actually have here a barrel that we currently have aging that Nick has been very kind to let us do. And this is a fun story. So this is whiskey that has gone through their Solera aging and would have been in like a 6-year cast strength blend that they did. But we liked it, and it was still toasting when we tasted it late last summer. And I said, can we keep letting it toast? Like, I want to ride this out. And I got another sample like a week ago, and it was noticeably sweeter than the last time I had tasted it. Granted, things don't age much in Wisconsin, particularly if they're in, the distillery itself, until that humidity and heat picks up. So I really want to get, the summer season on this guy, and I think it's going to be really good because I'm going to taste it now. I have too much stuff here. Good grief. But I was really vibing on it in this last tasty taste. So if we can get just a bit more oak, the viscosity is delightful. And the sweetness is way more pronounced than that Rossville Union. I don't know if that's the Solera aging he does. I don't know if that's, the used cooperage I wouldn't think would add a lot more sweetness. One thing I'll tease with too as we wait for Nick, I'm talking about his desired profiles with Bryce. He told me before that he's not a big tannin guy. Like, not big for like heavily oaked whiskeys, which is funny when it comes to talking about this guy right here, the Spaniard barrel pick we did, because that's Tannin City, right? And that was corn whiskey that picked up all the stuff from that Spanish oak, which is definitely my profile. But the Limousine Rye itself leans more on the herbaceous side of flavor profile. Like I said, citrus, like I think I had said lemon curd for that one too as a general flavor note. And then it gets really botanical, almost reminiscent of gin, peppermint, spearmint, juniper berries, stuff like that. This one, dang it, had a lot of chicken Alfredo for dinner. It's coming back to haunt me. This one in particular is just sweeter than that stuff. It sort of has all those base flavors, but with this toasting and this French oak, it's French oak. Pretty sure it's French oak. 90% sure it's French oak. Yeah, it starts sweet. Maybe not quite as oaky as the Rossville Union, but it starts at the front and it's just a wave. It's like, dare I say, citrus buttercream. Now, it's not the oaky vanilla bean buttercream note that I would pull on like a well-aged whiskey, but it's got this great body, great viscosity, and the sweetness that lingers. So I'm very much in on this, and I don't think it's going to get worse over the summer. It's definitely not going to over oak. Yeah, this is a limo pick, just if Terrence jumped in here. This right now is a barrel that we have aging at Dancing Goat. It's probably 7 years, maybe close to 8 years by the time we barrel it. That is aging currently in French oak. So it's like limo 6 year that they started toasting early last summer, and we're going to let it keep going. They've been very gracious to let us do that. I don't think that's generally the norm to be like, yeah, you can just leave it in here. But I can be forward, and I asked if that was possible, and Nick is a very swell person, and he said sure, and so that's what we've been doing. So I would say get hyped. Brian is not a big fan of the herbaceous ryes, so if you like them citrusy, you like them minty, this is going to be for you, but I promise it will deliver enough sweetness and viscosity with this French oak finishing to make it more accessible to the standard rye person. If you want a very woody rye that's even more sweet, more classic, like American style rye, we've got Driftless Glen Rye pick, which will probably come out actually before that. Oh, look who we got. Look who we got, people. He's here. The man is here. Hopefully he's ready.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
Good, brother. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good. We got a little bit of an audio issue, and I don't know if it's that the audio is coming through your headset or it's just not super clear.
Let me see real quick. I'm gonna try something crazy. Sorry, I thought I was being fancy.
No, yeah, it sounds like you're kind of talking underwater a little bit. Now I hear nothing. This may be interesting though. Like, to watch the distiller, master distiller, see if you can best a computer. What we can do, Nick, is boke you off, like remove you so you can play with your audio settings, because there's like the audio settings in StreamYard and on your computer that you might need to figure out. But you can actually test your audio or your mic in the settings too. So he'll be back. He'll be fine. Nick, just give me a big thumbs up and hold it until whenever you're ready. So as I was saying, I got to save just a little bit, the little bit I have of this left. So the next time Nick sends me a sample, I can taste the progress from March or April, whenever this was pulled, to another Wisconsin summer. One other thing Nick was saying last time I was out at Dancing Goat was how little the whiskey changes in the rick house over the winter, like from a chemical standpoint. When it gets cold, it's so cold here too. Like, there's just absolutely zero heat rolling through that rick house, which is a legitimate rick house. We haven't talked about that a whole lot on the channel, but it's like the one place you can go to in Wisconsin and kind of experience what a Kentucky rick house is like. Maybe not quite as big as some of the big guys, but yeah, it's ricks and stuff, which I like that from an aging standpoint. You know, it's fine to walk into somebody's barn where they have a bunch of barrels on pallets. You know, it's better than nothing, but it's not the rick house experience. A rick house has a certain smell, a certain feel that is perfect, and you just can't replicate it. It's kind of the best thing ever. The spice on this pick is much more mellow. That French oak finishing, maybe mellowing that out a little bit. It's not the big black pepper bomb that Rossville Union I just tried. Oh, it looks like Nick is ready to go.
I'm pretty sure. Is this it?
It's way better. Way better.
Good. Sorry. My bad.
No, I'm just glad you're here. Thank you for your time. Like, time is very valuable. Like, all we have is time. What do we have but time? But I was telling my wife before I came down here, I was like, I'm just so stoked to talk to Nick tonight, because I always get fired up whenever I talk to you. You're like a passion infuser. So yeah, anybody who's going to watch this is going to be blessed by getting to listen to you talk. So thank you.
I appreciate that. I like to connect with people who like to celebrate life and whiskey, and I always love talking to you.
Sweet. Well, that's what we get to do tonight. I've got, of course, whiskeys here, and a lot of the followers of the channel have been able to try your stuff now, which is exciting, but we have not actually released a rye yet. I was just telling them about this one we have toasting, but we haven't done a pick of the rye until this one comes out, probably back half of this summer after it gets some hot months on it. Yeah, but I really like the way it's evolving. How much time do you have, Nick? I want to be respectful of your time. So
30, 45 minutes, an hour. I go an hour. I don't know how late do you usually do this?
We normally take it till 10. That's with the hard cut off, because I'm a big sleep guy, big fan of sleep. So I'm just gonna get into it and let you run like a maniac here. I was telling the folks what I wanted to really hear you talk about was why 95.5 rye as a primary. Like, tell me about the rye mash bills again at Dancing Goat, and why you arrived at those compared to what you could do.
Well, obviously if you're sourcing rye, which is where a lot of businesses start at, you're going to end up at MGP. And even if you don't have kind of the family kind of connection that I have to it. And so MGP rye, especially, Templeton rye got hot. And when everyone found out that was from Indiana, that gave it a lot of respectability, that Indiana rye. And, you've heard me talk before about how I really believe that MGP makes the best rye in the world. And so the original business plan was to model ourself after them. And sometimes everyone always tells you in whiskey that like these are magical moments, these are miracles. You can't make what someone else is making, you can't replicate it. We'll give you the mash bill, all those things, and you don't really believe it. Or I didn't. I was like, we're just distilling, we're fermenting things. But the more and more I made rye whiskey, specifically 95% and 51%, because I'll talk a lot about both, was to kind of model after the success of that. And so we originally sourced 51% because we liked it better younger. And so I started out making 51% rye. And the first whiskeys that we ever made at the Dancing Goat were actually 60-40 wheat malts. And we started with that blend kind of as an homage to some of our friends in the area, John Jeffries being one of those people who was at Distiller and then moved on. He was at Santa Fe, and then he went to Bentley Heritage, where he is at now. But he was a big part of just inspiration for our place, and he was really kind to me at times. And so we made the 60-40 because that's what he really liked when he got out of school. And so when we sourced our rye, we started the 51 because it was better younger. But one of the things I learned drinking 51 is everyone's really used to that high spice rye, that 95 now. But traditionally, 51 was a dominator in the market in terms of case sales and popularity, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so this new really intense flavor, high phenolic flavor from, straight cooperage activation, it's really new. It is fantastic. It's really good. But there was a tried and true 51 tendency, and so we went with that because it was better young. And we learned along the way that we really liked that high phenolic activity. We didn't do a lot of straight ryes because we still get a little more high phenolic activity from the 95. But we really like that commitment to spice. And so we really learned two things about rye. Rye can be really balanced, and it's really, really good in balance with corn. And so we've done two different 51 mash bills. We've done 51 44-5, being 44 corn, 5 malted barley. And then we've also omitted it completely and done 51-49. And that's something you'll see a lot of from us when we start releasing our own mash bills, is not only of rye, you'll see that with malt too, 51-49. It's a really interesting, to put things in that close of proportion is a really interesting blend because you get enough sweetness from corn to really support whatever intense flavor you have. And so I know you've had the malted bourbons. I know they aren't exactly always your style, but it's a really interesting distillate at the end of the day, right? It's a really unique thing, but the thing we learned about with when they get older is they're really balanced. And they take really well to the French oak. The 95 out of MGP, though, is born for French oak. It gives a really cool eugenol activation in terms of a phenolic activity. If you have high proof, so if you're in like high proof being relative, if you're blending at MGP, you're usually coming down in proof unless you're in a really unique position in the Ricks where you would go up. But a lot of those positions, now are going to Rossville and their own brands, as they should. They should give the best Rick positions to their own brands. But when you start to see stuff on MGP, like 120, 125, 130, with French oak, short contact time, high vanillin extraction, really high vanillin extraction. If you lower the proof on that, you get more complex spice flavors that'll come up, and that takes a longer exposure time. And so that's kind of what guides our principle with the proofing down over time. We want to give a long rest with and take all the vanillin we can, and then we come down over time, and we want to sweep out all those other phenols and tannins and what have you from the barrel.
Let's talk about that, because we didn't go into detail when I last had you on about the method of production for Limousine Rye, which if people know Dancing Goat now, they either know it because of Death's Door, which you absorbed, or because of Limousine Rye. So tell me why Limousine Rye is the primary whiskey you released originally, and give the story for Nation on how you guys make that.
I'd love to. I absolutely would love to. And so we started the distillery in honor of my grandfather. And my grandfather spent a lot of time working in Canada. He loved Canadian rye. And so he loved blending straight and use cooperage together. My dad also loves Canadian rye. Big Canadian Club Old Fashioned guy, my dad is. Both of them worked in Canada a good amount. They know the whiskey really well. They know the inventories up there really well. And so we knew we kind of wanted to pay homage to that. And so the plan was to source the 95 and use cooperage. And we looked at it as a couple things. Bourbon's really unsustainable. I mean, it's a very wasteful industry. At the time, there were so many used barrels everywhere. And we knew that we could get really young bourbon barrels. We knew we'd get a great extraction. And we thought eventually the standards of identity would allow us to call it straight whiskey, because Canadians can call it straight rye whiskey. Little did we know that we wouldn't get the same designation. And our designation can come in later, because it actually gives us a lot of freedom with our finishes, which is interesting. So we knew we wanted to blend rye mash bills, and we knew we wanted to have really good spicy phenolics that were popular, but we also thought the tried and true 51 would do really well. My family has a lot of experience in making alcohol, literally, like, at plant. I helped my grandfather build a plant when I was 18. And so I put the whole bottling line together for our rum chata plant that we just sold to Gallo, kind of out in Milwaukee, kind of towards Milwaukee, but kind of by you, but not really by you, but kind of closer to you than me. I've always been involved in manufacturing with my grandfather since I was 18. And so I know how to move fluids. I can move them from tank to tank really well. I know how to clean pumps. I know how to clean tanks. These are all parts of distilling that I didn't have to learn, that I knew inherently. I knew how to, I call it cracking a whip, but working a pot still. I knew how to work a pot still from some other stuff I'd done, and then from having fun with my grandpa. And what I found out really quick is it's the exact same thing, just bigger. But the one thing I didn't know how to do was blend. I was a bartender. I loved making drinks when I was in college, and then shortly after, there's a huge change in cocktail culture, and it really went to craft cocktails. But when I was in college still, and shortly thereafter doing high volume bartending, either down in Florida for spring breaks or around Chicago, Iowa area, there was we'd make shots. We'd be using like different puckers with different rums and doing layering and stuff. And the kind of thing was just shots. We do a lot of really fun shots. And so when I got out of there, I got really into baking, and that got me really into flavor. And so I knew kind of what I wanted to do structurally with the whiskey from drinking a lot of High West. I love Boo Rye. It was one of my inspirations. But I didn't know like how to get there. Like I know how to get there with cookies. You know what I mean? I'm really good at baking. I know how to get there, I know how to get there with food. I'm a pretty good cook, but I didn't know how to do blending. And so Limousine Rye came up as an idea where we want to do something really cool. We want to do something unique in terms of the product itself, but I really need to learn how to blend and finish. And so Limousine Rye, at the end of the day, and is a really convoluted process, but it's best summed up as a double barrel finished rye whiskey. And the reason why I call it a rye whiskey instead of a straight rye is because the initial aging is in used cooperage, and almost all of the finishes are usually in used cooperage. The one that you were sipping earlier that we're waiting for the nuts to drop on when we send to the rick house, that's a new barrel finish, and that's kind of we have toast, a good amount of toast in there, a medium plus toast. Barrel number 6400. I keep an eye on it. I love that barrel. Yeah. I got it. But so in order to get in that barrel, we had to do a finish first on it, and that's where Limousine gets its name. And so we wanted to maximize. At our time, Limousine wood was controlled coming out of the Limousine forest, and the Limousine wood or Limousine oak is a type of oak. It's grown in a region of France in the Limousine forest. I think it's the Vosges region, Vosges. That's the redneck. I don't know how to pronounce the French, but I know how to spell it because I've read it. And there's also a couple other really interesting forests there. There's Allier, Allier, which is a really, really, really cool forest. And then Troncois, Troncais. I think there's a weird French thing in there. But they all grow really interesting oak that's really good for spirits. And so at the time, you could only buy used barrels unless you were a producer from France. And so we bought a bunch of barrels, and we had them recoopered. So they were basically new. We scraped off a bunch of wood, had them charred and retoasted, and we made 18 usable barrels out of 32 of them, which is a big loss, especially at the time because it was really expensive. And so to get the most bang for our buck out of it, we were like, well, we need to pass the most fluid as we can through all of these. And so we did a couple things. We hooked it up into a Solera. And so the idea was never to actually blend in young with old, but it was to kind of keep a batch going, right? And so it's the idea of we have a little bit to lead a blend to keep it going. If we start to lose our way, we can reset it. We can get rid of the mother load. But the idea wasn't to put in like 3-year with 6-year and tell everyone it was 6-year. It was just to keep the blend going. Our Solera isn't a traditional one. It's 4 towers of 4 connected barrels. And what ends up happening is you get hydraulic pressure on the bottom barrels, which forces a heavy vanillin extraction. And so it's kind of a little cheat for us to get the most fluid through those. And then
real quick, Nick, I'm going to pause you. Hey, Eric, can you grab the link to the video that I made, the sort of Dancing Goat brand summary video? Because that has a little snapshot of the Solera in that, if people want to watch that later. All right,
hi, Eric.
keep
And so it kind of forces a really good pop, high extraction of vanillin, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. And so that's what we're taking out of that French oak. And then once we get that vanillin in, we're ready to start proofing down. And so we'll put it in another cask, usually an American oak cask that it came out of, that we dumped from. And so it's already been blended together too. You know what I'm saying? So we blend it before we come in, then we do another blend on the way out. And so we put into casks, and then we start proofing about a pound of water every other day, or a pound of water a day.
Do other distilleries do that, Nick?
No, I don't think so. Not to this level. Some do, like Joey does. Not to the same. Joey has a little bit. Joe Henry is who I'm talking when I say Joey. He was just here actually. What Joe does is they'll proof a little less frequently over a longer period of time. And so what I'll do is I'll get to where I want to be and then rest for a long time. Get to where I want to be and then rest for a long time. And then when I get to time to proof down, it's over 6 weeks, a little bit every other day. Joe will usually get to where he wants to be and rest there for a couple months. And anyone that works with Fraley is kind of going to be doing the same thing. It's a lot of babying and caring. I don't work with Fraley, but a lot of those guys that have done really well do. And it's kind of become popular because she started doing these blending classes. There's another technique that a lot of people do called Blase. And so that's like these are all French barreling techniques, the proofing down in the barrel, Blase. And there are ways to when you proof, you usually are diluting flavor. But if you can increase tannic extraction or add tannin in it, you're actually adding flavor. And so that's kind of the premise behind it. And so it's becoming much more popular now with smaller producers. But I think the other thing that you're going to start seeing is, not to talk shit about people, but me, I'm a spicy mofo. There was a
let me have it.
There was an advertisement I heard. I don't know if it was on Bourbon Pursuit or Target on YouTube or something, but it was Old Elk talking about slow proofing. And they were talking about putting everything in a tank and proofing it down like over the course of a week. And that's romantic. I get that slower than other stuff, but it ignores the premise of what the whole point is. When you do, it's called élevage is the premise. And the idea is that you use blending to increase the viscosity of your actual final product. And so when you're in a sealed tank, you're only going to dilute things. But if you think about mass, like let's say this is our barrel, this is your barrel, and if I stood it on its head, it'd have about that much liquid in it, right? Well, there's that much barrel that's not being extracted, or if it's on its side, it's the same type of thing. And so if we add a little bit of water and let it sit, we're going to extract more tannin, even though as we increase that surface area, especially on a barrel that's horizontal, because it's starting to get smaller as it gets toward the top, we'll pull more tannins. And so as we dilute flavor, we'll add it, dilute it, add it, dilute it, add it. The other thing is it allows complexity to build, because as the alcohol starts to settle and mingle together, you can have some other reactions occurring. Some of those are bad reactions, some of those are good reactions. Like an example would be like a Maillard reaction or something like that. There's also reactions that can turn things into vinegar. That takes a really, really, really long time and a lot of residual sugar. But there's other reactions that can add butteriness, that can add body viscosity. And the whole thing that we're looking for, the thing that really makes a great whiskey is it's a finish. It's a great finish, and you can have mild bouquets or dull bouquets and with great finishes. I'd say it's still a solid pour, but if there's not a great finish, it's like, the nose is okay, but no finish is short.
That's what I just said about Rossville Union. I said it's got a good nose, great front, finish kind of sucks.
Well, it's interesting because, people chase proof because they think flavor. And that is true. That's absolutely true when things are proofed down in a steel tank, because you're just diluting what you had. That was great. But when you can proof down over time in a barrel, you can actually, alcohol is thicker wet at 94, 95 proof, it's more viscous than that buildup of bonding of actual molecules of water and alcohol than 115, 110, 112 proof. And so it's actually interesting because if you can proof something down over the course of like 4 years to like 94 proof in a barrel, like, like a 10-year-old bourbon, it would be insane. Like it would be nuts, but there's two problems. There's no more 10-year-old bourbon. Right. And then also that takes a lot more touches than really large producers want to do. Like if you saw like a really good comparison between large and small producers, I'll compare myself to MGP. Okay. So MGP sends us a thing of barrels, right? 88 will fit on a truck standing up. These are full. These are source barrels that we're bringing in. They load that truck in 1 minute with the custom built conveyor that goes in and I have a team of 4 guys doing it by hand, blood, sweat, and tears. It's just different. It's a different amount of work. You know what I'm saying? There's different risks involved. There's different, they clearly make way more whiskey than we do. And they still work over there, but they want to put a barrel in a rick and not touch it unless the customer asks for a sample until it's time to pull it. And there's issues with MGP from the standpoint that a lot of their inventory is vertical and it doesn't move for years. And then when they ship it, if they put it on the wrong head, empty barrels, and so there's just the ability to give our inventory more attention in a different way. And it makes phenomenal whiskey. And really what we're doing with Limousine Rye is we're putting the finishing touch that they don't have the luxury of performing as a commodity producer just on a great whiskey, and then luckily for us, it's at this time it's unique, but I don't think it's going to be unique much longer with, one, the award that we got, but then 2, the barrel market it's insane. Yeah. And a lot of people are getting cut out completely, and they're only going to have the barrels that they dump to fill. And so you're going to start seeing people doing more, what I do a ton of, bourbon mashes and rye mashes and use cooperage because they're going to have to, but hopefully people look at us and say, oh, you can totally do it. And you can do it really well, as a conceited, arrogant thing for myself. But
that's fine. We talked about that last week in that, like, with the barrel shortage, if production stays high, that it does seem like there's going to be a lot more used cooperage in the American market, which is going to make even the value of used cooperage go up pretty dramatically, because Scotch is, they're still going to need their stuff. Like, and if we start using it, that's going to decrease the amount of used cooperage available for like Scotch production. So
it's crazy.
It's a whole big thing.
It's absolutely nuts when you start thinking about us all swimming for the same meat. And that's part of it. It's very similar to mezcal and agave. Mezcal and agave in 20 years, it's not going to exist. All the agaves are going to be gone. Mezcals will still be around, but blue agaves, gone. And so, and then you start thinking about, well, are we planting enough trees to cover bourbon's growth? And how long is bourbon going to grow like this? I mean, this is insane. With the thing about this, the new Heaven Hill expansion, the continuous Buffalo Trace expansions, Barton shutting down for tourists to become, you got to assume it's just a white label workhorse. The amount of money being thrown around is crazy. Bardstown Bourbon Company, Dublin, I think they're doubling down. But the most shocking thing of all of it to me, the absolute most shocking, MGP is closed its books, is taking no more customers, is whittling away customers. So a lot of smaller craft are going to be completely shut out of access for new fill, not even old fill, but new fill. And they're whittling down to core mash bills, and they will no longer do any custom runs. And I think that's a huge indication of commodity bourbon and where it's at. It's China and Europe, they're hungry, especially with the ability to ship at a more affordable cost now with certain trade agreements going through, or I don't really know if you call it going through or like things ceasing, but with tariffs coming off, they're hungry for it. And Asian money will compete with American money all day.
Yeah, certainly for now.
Yeah, but my favorite, get on them Armagnacs, dude. 29, 30-year-old.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was thinking I should open one of these tonight while I had you on. Which one should I open?
Oh,
we're talking about rye, so I was thinking.
You're a big cast strength guys, so go with the love. Because I know you love our cast
tell me as much of the story on this because I've been trying to read it. It's all faded out, but like let's tell as much of this story as you can.
Absolutely. So we do a lot of bottling for a lot of people, and we ended up with some product that overran. And so we had some extra stuff this one time. This was many years ago. We had some extra stuff that we were supposed to destroy, and we paid excise tax on it already. And so instead, this is back when my grandpa was still alive. And so we bottled it all up, and we gave it away to our family and friends for the holidays. You know, we got it to our retailer and you know, caboose. And so I always had that idea in my head that we could do that, you know. And so we had some things happen at the Goat, and I can't go too much into it, but there was a large amount of whiskey that was not in the state that it should have been when we received it. It's not MGP whiskey that was ruined, but it was some other stuff that we were working with, and we got reimbursed in a really interesting way by our supplier with an NDA, and so we were supposed to destroy it. And so I had already had it in our Solera, and so it took us about 4 weeks to get on the calendar for a tanker to get it bust out because it's certain proof it needs to be in a certain carrier. And so on the way out the door, I snagged a couple cases worth because it had been in the Solera so long. And it's a cool mash bill from Canada, delicious. I think delicious. But this was our inspiration to do cast strength. Was from this. And so,
it's almost similar to like a light whiskey profile if you made light whiskey with high rye.
Yeah, it's a little young, and it's in the used cooperage. If you can decipher that label,
it's really tough. It's like
I'm sorry. You know, it's me. It's me like doing a printer.
Toasted,
you know,
charred, Quercus alba.
Quercus alba. They'll all say that.
Alba.
I was being fancy.
But all so yeah, just different.
And that has
yeah, it's it was born June 10th, 2014. Yeah, anyway. So as we you mentioned like, oh yeah, this like Limousine Rye, cast strength rye. Like tell me about what your goals are with rye. Like how has Limo evolved over the years, and where is your rye program headed?
Yeah, so as I've learned more about rye and MGP and just how they do business, and you know, like what I just mentioned, like what their future goals are. A lot of my plans were with the Dancing Goat was to crank 4 mash bills year round on the new Vendome, and then use the head frame and a pot still that we're going to buy to do really weird stuff with Bavarian Saison yeast on bourbons, which kind of really works with the fermenter size and design that we have over there. But and then also 100% corn, which you know we are both a fan of. I think the Spaniard. And some of those mash bills I was going to have MGP make. I was going to depend on them to make all of them, and then we were going to make them as well. With MGP refusing custom runs, that takes off the menu quite a few of the things I was going to have them make. And so it looks like I'll probably be sourcing 95 from them heavily for the Limousine brand, especially. We've gotten a lot of attention after San Francisco World Spirits Expo. And so we've been shipping cases. And so we're going to double down on 95 out of them, keep this flavor profile consistent, and to open up the ability for us to get those other mash bills that they won't make for us, specifically the 100% corn, as well as they'll make us 49 malt bourbon, and we'll do a lot of that too. But then also 44 rye bourbon, which is my favorite. And you'll notice that's the inverse. That's kind of the inverse of that 51 rye mash bill. The one with 5% malt. I love that mash bill. It's really, really good.
Yeah, 44 rye is really, really high.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. It's peppery. It comes across strong. It gets mature young. You know what I mean? It's a great mash bill. It blends really well at 5 years. I love it. I really love it. We put in a lot of equipment, and we're looking to hammer it. We're gonna get started here. We're looking to commission our still here in the next 2-3 weeks. and then they use this summer trying to just figure the system out generally, and then we're going to start hammering at the end of the year. We're taking on sourcing clients for new fill, and so we will be other distilleries distillate, which I'm really excited for. And it's going to be more custom stuff. Our mash bills are our mash bills. If you want to make them, you can make them yourself. And I'll tell you how to make them. I'm not going to make them for you. But we'll make any mash bill for anybody. We've been talking to quite a few people in Wisconsin about helping add to some of their source production, or also, some people that are just starting or haven't started yet, trying to get some stuff done. So, I really view this as we like to blend, because blending kind of helps. It helps round out rough edges and eliminate faults. Blending to me in wine is superior than just straight wine. It's better in Scotch, and I think it's better in rye and whiskey and bourbon. And single barrels are great when you have enough ammo, when there's enough,
sure,
unique enough, and you have enough of them. But blending is how we're going to be successful, and blending is how I could drink whatever I want. I'm drinking rare breed, it's barrel proof, no single barrels. It's a blend. You know what I mean? It's beautiful. It's how you deliver whiskey affordably. That's phenomenal, is blending. And I view it as, we're painters at the Dancing Goat, just like every distillery that blends whiskey is a painter. And there's two ways to paint. You can make all your own paint, which takes a lot of time and attention to detail, and it's limiting to what you can make well there. Or you can, buy your paint, or you can do both. And that's really what I want to do, is I want to do both. But I think Limo is going to really focus on those 95 rye distillates at MGP because we're not going to be able to source the other things from there. So if we don't make them ourselves, we won't get them.
Sure. So right now, 100% of the stuff you guys are releasing is either being released as single barrels, like what we have here, or it's the Limo Rye in terms of whiskey, correct?
Yeah. So the Dancing Goat American Corn obviously is the single barrels. We don't have any other blends out yet. I'm working on a couple blends. I got a couple samples to send you. I mocked up a couple lab samples of a honey and port blend. Sweet. So I didn't sacrifice your lamb yet. The honey barrel's still there.
Yeah, I want to taste the honey all by itself too. So.
I'm gonna send you all of them. It's a lab. It's a lab.
I know we'll sell that one if we sell. If we want to
send you I'll send you the honey barrel. You're gonna love that honey and port blend though. It's sick.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm stoked to taste them.
My favorite, I really like large format barrels because you get to blend. Like the Spaniard was a blend in it's a single barrel. I really love that premise, that idea. To set something up for great success in a great cask. The really cool thing that I can't wait for is just working with new partners, some of our new sourcing partners. I think people are going to be really excited who we're going to end up working with. And we have a couple projects that we're releasing at the end of the year. We have a blend that we're doing. It's cool. It's really cool. We actually just moved it from a vat back into barrels. And so it's, I know you've tried the oat bourbons. It's got an oat bourbon in there, about 8.5, 9 years old. It has 36% rye bourbon mash, 8 years old. So use cooperage on that one. 95 rye whiskey, multiple finishes. You could call them limo style finishes blended together. All those are 8 years. And then there's a little bit of 12-year rye. There's 15-year-old light whiskey, and there's 20-year-old light whiskey. Yeah, it's pretty sick. It's pretty sick. And so
it's pretty solid.
Yeah, and so what we've done is we did a couple different blends, and so we have different. We have them all in barrels right now, resting, and we have different amounts in each barrel, so we can proof them down a little bit. And so what we're gonna do is I'll batch in the lab. We'll come up with our blend, and right now we have 8 barrels, young bourbon barrels that were, a large produce. They're bean barrels. I'll just tell you they're bean barrels. I love bean barrels because there's a ton of caramel left in them. If you can guarantee they're white labels, and we can because of our barrel supplier, KBB. So they know if they get white label beans to let us know. And I love them for finishing casks because there's a ton of caramel left in them. And it's prime. It's like ready at the surface. So we have 8 of those filled to the brim with a mix of the 20-year 95, the oat bourbon, and 36% rye mash. And so those are full to brim. They're sitting about 100 proof right now. I've been proving them down slowly over time. A lot of those have gotten a lot of French oak contact already. And then I have Shawnee Boy, Sean. He filled up a barrel out of there. He filled up a toast, one of this similar to yours, a French oak medium plus toast. Filled that up to the brim, and that also had port in it before, and so that's a ported toasted barrel. And then we also have a couple what we call petitos, and so a petito is you take aged whiskey, you proof it down, you put it in a barrel and you proof it down, and then you age it for a couple years. And so we have a 15-year-old petito, and so we took 15-year-old. Cool, right? Yeah, so it's take it down to about 80 proof, 90 proof, and let it sit for a couple years, and it develops complexity. And as long as it doesn't skunk, so you have to keep it, decent. You have to watch the proof. And then when you're ready to use it, you take it down under 60 proof, and then you can use that to proof down your barrels. And so what we'll do is we'll start at the highest proof barrel, and whatever the contribution to the blend is, that's what we do. We blend in the lab, and then we translate in person. And so we'll take that highest proof barrel, it'll be one of the big barrels, dump that amount in a tank that we need, and then get the next highest proof barrel, use that to proof down the next one. You know what I'm saying? So your proof, you're adding the next in proof to the highest one, if that makes sense. Sure, and so like this one will be like 110. And then we'll add the barrel that's like 109, and then 106, and then 104, and then 100. And all the way down to that one that's 60 ABV. And that's how we'll get to the final proof. And so the final proof will be around, I think, 89 or 90 proof. Crazy blend, really complex, really thick. I can't wait to share it with you guys.
What are you calling it? Like, what label? Like, how does the TTB, like, what category does this fall?
So we're still we still don't exactly know what we're going to do with it. I mean, we could use a blended whiskey designation, or we could use a DSS designation. What we really want to do is depending on what kind of designation we use, because the problem is we got ryes and bourbons in there together. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. So you call it a Blue Rye. We could definitely call it a Blue Rye, unless I put some brandy in it, which I'm probably going to put some brandy in it.
Why not? Why not?
But the target is to have 9 different types of booze in there. That's kind of the blend I settled on in the lab, the conceptual blend I settled on. That there was a really good theoretical blend. The theoretical blend is, one like single barrel samples of all these things blended together. And then we might do 2, 3, 4, 5 of those barrels in the actual blend, if that makes sense, to make up that proportion. And so. It's not exact. It's kind of the ballpark where you could end up on, but they're theoretical. They're in the lab. They're usually in glass, which means they're not as viscous. And so usually the ballpark always ends up better, if that makes sense. And so we call it in-house Meritage. We're going to really push marketing wise to kind of like look at it as a Meritage, like a Meritage wine is. We're trying to blend out faults. We're trying to put great texture and great flavor and layer those on top of each other. I've been calling it 9-banger. Nice. So yeah, that's what I call it.
Code name 9-banger.
Code name 9-banger, yeah. And we always wanted to do a mash bill or a thing like that, and my dad loves that. I've been saying that forever. One of the first mash bills I did was 9 grains. It was a bourbon.
Oh, wow.
It was, and there was like rice in there. There was sorghum in there. There was 2 types of corn. It was crazy. It's crazy. And it was in a small 5-gallon barrel at the stove in my home, when this was all just a concept. And so, but I always had that whenever there was a really interesting barrel, I'd be like, oh, some of that 9-banger bourbon. Oh. And so my dad went ahead and just grabbed a random design because we had we'd had the trademark already for 9-banger. And I don't know if it's actually going to be 9-banger. This is just a funny story. So my dad always wanted to do that. And so he got the trademark for it a couple years ago. And you have to renew and protect it if you don't do it. And so, show intent of use, we had to have a barrel, we had for cola, but I had no input on it. So my dad grabbed like a random list from a stack from my brother, who's in pretty intense in marketing for all types of companies. And so there's nope, I'm not doing the Adobe Flare now. There's this like stupid, I think it's coming with TT Patrol. There's this like shitty label of like 9-banger bourbon from the Dance and Go. It's like, that's not what it would ever look like. But that's what I call it, 9-banger. But I might not actually label it that. So, but I'll get you a sample. I'd love to taste it with when it is ready for you.
Nice. You're going to be at Distill America, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're doing me and Joey, and then do you know? Are you familiar with Wollersheim at all? Wollersheim Winery.
No. Yeah, I mean, I know obviously what they do, but I've not been out there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, the winery is absolutely beautiful. Tom and Celine and their whole family has done a great job out there. Tom and Celine work on the distilling side, and then Celine's family owns it. They're married. Tom and Celine are married, and Philippe is the patriarch of the family. He does all the wine. They do a great job, and so we're going to have a little event. It's going to be an old fashioned class, and so I'll teach you a rye old fashioned recipe. JoJo Henry will do a bourbon, and Wollersheim will do a brandy. It'll be a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be out there with Eric and with Matt Pletz. So bring some of the boys that you have met out there.
Oh, that'd be great.
We're gonna play golf in the morning, and then I think we got the VIP, not the VISP, but the second tier. So it'd be great to see you. But yeah, and then I just need to bring the wife out too to the distillery and
love to have her
because she's been sipping on these whiskeys, and I'm like, baby, you got to see this place. It's awesome. And yeah, definitely more fun to visit in the summer than in the winter.
Definitely, yeah, it's cold out there.
I think the 2 days I've been there, like we were there in August, and it was hot as balls, and then we were there, and it was freezing. It was like super hot and then super cold. So I need to come out like in May or early June or whatever. Couple more rye questions because that's what I promised Nation, and also squad who are watching the video. If you guys want to hit Nick up with some questions, throw them in the chat now, and I'll throw them up. But Nick, I wanted to ask you, like, you're well exposed in the American whiskey industry. You know a lot of people, you know a lot of the products. What are some of the other ryes that sort of inspire you, or the ones that you really dig from other American distilleries?
Okay, that's a good question. So I went on a really cool trip to Kentucky when we started designing the Dancing Goat, and I went to Claremont, had a ton of fun there. But really special place to me is Willet. I went into Willet before Purple Top Jason was really a thing, and they had before there was the bar at Willet, and there was just that tasting room upstairs, and I went in there and was very honest about who I was and what I was doing there, and taking notes. And I got an extended tour with the distiller after the group tour, and then they took me up there, and I got to try a bunch of Willet family ryes.
Nice.
Tried a 21-year Willet family rye. It was insane.
Holy
absolutely insane. One of my favorites I've ever had. So that kind of got me in the rye bug per se. I love the early whistle pigs that came out that like the 13-year, the 15-year. This stuff now, it's good. It's still, it's whistle pig rye. It's great. It's the best stuff out of Alberta, but those first years of just absolutely insane. Like buku insane. I remember when I met Dave the third time I met him, and I finally got like the stones to be like, how the fuck did you do that? And he's like, didn't do shit, just got rid of the bad ones. And that's like one of the things. That's one of the things about blending that, like, you don't need to do too much. You just need to get rid of bad shit. You know what I mean? It's like if you can get rid of the bad barrels without selling them to people and stealing their money, that's the best. But just showcasing your best foot forward. The thing about Kentucky is everyone lost all the bourbon down there. You know what I mean? But there is a lot of great rye down there. Smaller producers, everywhere doing some really crazy stuff. Have you ever had Catoxin Creek rye?
No, but I've heard good things about what they do. Yeah. Of all the craft whiskeys I've tried, which is a lot, I haven't had their stuff yet.
Yeah, I think they're if you're looking at Nielsen numbers, they're the number one craft whiskey pretty much in the country. True craft, like actually craft rye whiskey. It's really cool. They're old traditional methods. I think they're doing a 51 only pot stills. Really good taste to it. Rye ever. Let me Google it really quick. It was a United. Bourbon or Pursuit United, there, because I think Pursuit United is theirs.
But you mean the Pursuit Spirits source stuff?
Yeah, the single barrels that they do. The single. So from a couple years ago, there was one from Finger Lakes,
Yeah, I remember when they released that.
I think it was 18. Is it? Yeah, I think it's like Bourbon Pursuit 18 or something, or 25, or 16. Sorry, I can't find it on the thing. But that was, it's one of the craziest rye whiskeys I've ever had. I mean, it's really out there. The really cool thing about rye is the really cool thing about everything. Most people, the romance that you need malt for conversion, I think is kind of people understand. Almost everyone's using enzyme to convert. Malt is really used as a flavor addition, but Dave Pickrell really championed 100% rye, and he'd teach people. There's a lot of ways to cook it, because there's misnomers that 100% rye means all the same type of grain. Like you could have 100% rye, and that could be 85% rye and 15% Bracetto rye instead of Spooner, or malted rye, and so. Andrew, I want that bottle of Finger Lakes. But the really cool thing with what Dave was doing is he taught a lot of people to cook 100% unmalted rye, and the way that you have to do it, there's a problem with beta glucans where they create a lot of proteins and a lot of viscosity, and so you can use enzyme to break through that. But Dave actually believed in the bullshit. He believed in the enzymatic activity and rest and hold. And so he would take all the time in the world to teach you how to cook 100% unmalted rye with no enzyme, which takes a really long hot break. And so a hot break is a period where you hold the temperature until basically you create protease enzymes in your cook. And protease enzymes, basically they snip proteins. And one really good example of proteins would be in cocktails like foam in a sour. That's protein. That's foam. And it's the same thing in a rye mash, it foams. And so what Dave would have people do, not in vacuum, but out of vacuum, so at atmospheric, is get to 200 degrees and hold it for about an hour and a half. And it would cook out all that foam, and then you could come back down and you could do a rest for conversion at 140 with your enzyme, or 150 or 160 with your enzyme. We usually convert at 159 with our enzyme. He was the Johnny Appleseed of whiskey. And that's a really interesting thing to call him, because one, he started a bunch of distilleries, but also he sprinkled MGP and Alberta along his way. And I think if people got a full list of all the NDAs that he had to sign and realized how much he spread MGP rye across the country and into our palates, they'd realize, wow, we owe so much more to Dave than we ever knew. And so I'd say probably my favorite and most inspirational rye would be 100% rye. First made popular by Whistle Pig, but we cook a lot of it. It's the only thing we've cooked this whole year. The rye whiskey is really interesting because there's so much history to it, specifically in like the Northeastern, that's one of the reasons why they went up there, because they grow just like our climate in the Northeast. It grows really well. In the Northeast, it grows really well like it does in Wisconsin because we're similar latitude, right? And so they get more maritime rye, and we get a little more hardy rye. And so their maritimes do really, really well. They flourish in the fog. But the interesting thing about rye is, a couple hundred years ago, if I told you about the Salem witch trials,
I mean, I'm ishy familiar, but I don't know your story with that.
Well, I was there, man, and let me tell. No, I'm kidding.
Let me have what you got.
So back in the times, right, when the Salem witch trial happens, there's a lot of types of rye. And what you're really looking to cook as a distiller is plump rye. That's a quality. And so you want to mill it to a point where it has a certain amount of bran in proportion to ash. And you want those, as a larger distiller, you want large chunks, kind of like a coarse cracked coffee for a French press, my coffee brother.
Nice. Yeah.
Whereas,
speaking my language. Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. And so you'd want to get rid of the smaller, like dustier particles and just have those. Like that's what Beam cooks. And the reason they do that is it doesn't clog their hoses or their lines. Craft distillers cook mostly off flour because they get better conversion. And they don't have to worry about clogging because their hoses are much smaller. And so they don't use plump rye. They take plump rye and they grind it up to flour. But so when you're looking at plump rye, once you have it, you can grade it. And there's all different grades of rye. But there's 3 grades of rye that you really want to avoid. There's Weevil-y rye, which is rye that has a components of weevils in excess of X amount per pound. I don't know what the exact amount is. There's garlicky rye, which is rye that has the rye field's been infected with garlic bulbs at a certain proportion, and and then there's ergotti rye, which is a rye that has been infected with ergot, ERGOT. So ergot is a hepatotoxic mold that loves to grow on rye, on moist rye. And it actually, it's kind of like licking a Sonoran river toad. Like it'll make you see stuff. It'll make you hallucinate. And so around the area that Salem witch trials took place, if historically you go back through climate records, they had a crazy period of time where they had massive ergot infections all over the country, and they've found this with like carbon dating. This is pretty much been proven as a fact. And so the operating premise is, the people, they'd grow rye, they'd eat it all summer, and then they'd store it in the winter, and they'd make bread out of it all winter, and then they'd give porridge. And so they're not actually cooking it long enough to kill the ergot, right? And they're storing for when the ergot gets worse. And so basically these people were taking in every day, all the time, every meal, little doses of this hallucinogenic mold. And eventually it was almost like the salt on top of like the crazy dish of like, burn her, she's a witch, and if she doesn't burn, she's a witch, and if she does burn, she's a, but it's all these people got real wound up because this like microdose slow drip over years of this ergot in the rye. And so it's true too. I'm dead serious. It's one of my favorite things about history. But so there's actually a distiller's manual, Seagram's distiller's manual that talks all about it, about ergoty and usually and garlicky rye. But it's very strong phenolic grain, but it's very susceptible to tainting. It's very susceptible to being impacted by, like strong flavor, specifically, garlic,
Yeah. Are there any complexities? Somebody asked this question earlier, but if you're asking lay people, we just know that rye gets foamy when you're mashing it, and so it can make a big mess. But are there other complexities in distilling rye that you kind of deal with versus like a standard bourbon mash bill where the rye is a lot lower?
100%. And even like in a high rye bourbons will give you trouble too. But the thicker ryes that we cook, they're real thick. So if you're talking about, we cook about a 32 beer gallon mash, which comes out to about 2.5 pounds of grain per gallon of water that's used. And so that's a real thick, that's a real thick porridge. And so there's complications with what kind of pumps can move those. But the big one is in a pot still, you can really scorch rye really easily. And so you really got to make sure that you're heating at a really consistent rate and that you have an agitator going the whole time. In columns, for people that are running, when you buy a column from Vendome, they give you a little interview, right? And so they ask you, hey, what are you cooking? What are you mostly going to use? And the columns can make it. You can make rye on it. You can make bourbon on it. But there's certain modifications that can be made to make it easier to run rye, specifically like the ryes that we run. And so two things are, when you talk about a column, it's really just, a column is a pot still, right? So this is my pot and this is my condenser, and they're going to be connected. Oh man, it was nice. Hold on here. Maybe they can both fit my hand. Perfect. Pot and condenser, right? And they're connected by a line arm. And so basically we heat up here and then we cool it off, right? And in doing so, we leave a bunch of water behind and we increase the potency of the thing that comes out of our condenser. So when you think about a column, it's really just I can't turn my column upside down because it's a Diet Coke that's full. Here's my new condenser. So let's take our condenser and put it on top and smush it. And then and so now we have like a little canister, right? And so we boil here, create vapor, and then turn into water. And it's just right there as water. Well, let's put another one of those boilers on top, and another, and another, and another. And so that's what a column is. A column is basically a pot still that's been straightened and shortened and multiplied over and over and over. And so each one of those little points where you've squatted it down is called a plate, right? Or a tray is often what's used too. And so in bourbon production, the premise is you take your mash and you run it down a bunch of sieve trays that are going to go like this inside of the column all the way down, and you're going to send a column of steam up it. And so the way that we functionally use it is the mash is going to come into a plate or tray, travel across it to a drain, and then go down to the next one. And so it's like doop, 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 doop. And so that tray has little perforations in it. And in those perforations, we're going to blow a steam column. And that steam column is going to strip out all the alcohol, aldehydes, and esters from the mash. And so if you go through it, if you make the mash cross enough times, you're going to strip all the alcohol out, which is the goal, right? So those little holes for the steam, they're a different size for us because we have a thicker mash. So those can be a little bit thicker. With bourbon, you want 40% of your mash to travel across the tray and not drip through those holes. And so with bourbon, if you're running mostly thinner bourbons, like 21% rye, they can make those with a different diameter size. They make those smaller. Also, the drains can be bigger for ours. Ours drains are a little bit bigger, which takes away from the volume that can travel across it, but also allows our mash to kind of plop around a little better. And so those are just things that for efficiency, they kind of set those up ahead of time. But if you had a lot of people use heating elements, like specifically in smaller producers in smaller stills, and a heating element with rye will never work ever. It's the dumbest thing I've ever done, for sure.
And why is it?
Well, so a heating element. So usually when we're talking about a pot still, here's our pot, right? And it has a steam jacket around it, right? And so that steam jacket is like a hug. It's like a hug of steam. And as long as you're blowing steam into the jacket, it's hugging it with steam, right? If you turn the steam off, it's just hugging it. It's not getting as hot because there's no steam. But the idea is there's not a lot of surface area in contact with that massive liquid, right? Because in a small still, the jacket's smaller and the liquid is still pretty concentrated. When you get bigger, steam jackets get more efficient at transferring heat because as the still gets bigger, taller, and wider, there's more surface area touching the liquid mass. That makes sense?
Yep.
So on smaller stills, often what they'll do is they'll actually put a heating coil or a heating rod or something through the center mass of the still. And so that gives more surface area and allows for hotter heat up time. But in rye, the beta glucans will just torch. They'll torch. And once you torch, you can't filter out scorched, even if you go to 190 and try to. Never
Are there
works.
particular producers who you're like, no, yeah, like that's a torched rye?
Not.
It's running anybody under the bus, but
it's never a brand. You know what I mean? It's always. We do a lot of distillery releases, and all of our distillery releases are of like really dope single barrels that we can't sell in Wisconsin. Well, that we can sell at our tasting room, but we didn't register in the state of Wisconsin. So like we did a bunch of Michigan ones, and we don't sell a lot of stuff that we make besides white, because white goods, literally gin and vodka, because we're waiting for it to become 6 years old. That's what we're really waiting for. You see a lot of distilleries will sell things that they made in the tasting room and special releases that are like, why'd you put that in a bottle? Well, it's like, well, because someone's going to buy it. It's going to disappear forever. And so we usually find the grenades to jump on is usually like smaller distillery releases. So I don't have an example of a brand. I might have an example of a brand. I'm not going to say it.
We can talk about it later. Yeah.
Okay,
Two
great.
more questions and then we'll wrap it up. How far are we away from Dance and Go distillate being released?
I think like about a year and a half.
Okay.
We have four. We have some 4-year 51, some 4.5-year-old. We'll definitely be releasing a couple I just said we're not doing this, but we're going to do it. We're going to release a couple distillate single barrels through the tasting room of things that we're not going to bring into distribution. Specifically some of those 60-40 wheat malt barrels I talked about. I went through a really cool phase where I was only making bourbon with, I called it America Fuck Yeah Bourbon, and it was only with red, white, and blue corn. It was like a 3, 4, 5 month phase. That's the only thing I would cook. And so we have a ton of that. That's about 3.5, 4 years old. And then a good amount of 51 rye. That's about 4 years old. So we'll probably pick a couple of those to be our stars at 5 years old and release those at 5.5, and then get those into distribution at 6. Trying to think. I do have some really cool stuff though I know this is really far from being released, but from the last 2 years, we started doing some really cool stuff with new fill French oak. And so I don't have a lot because the barrels are so expensive, but we have, I think, 8 total, all about a year and a half old, straight bourbons and straight ryes put in new charred and toasted French oak. And it is nuts. They don't taste 2 years old. It's absolutely insane, but toasted French oak is really reactive. So, but yeah, we're really excited to I'm really excited to start getting some of our distillates out there. You know, I went through a really large growing pain of making really shitty whiskey for a long time. I think everyone does that starts doing this unless they have really gnarly consultants at the beginning. But we've been very fortunate. My family has been very financially fortunate with our success with RumChata. And so we had the luxury of we're not going to sell that stuff. Like no one's ever going to taste it.
Yeah, that's perfect segue, because my last question was, I was gonna ask you, you talked about Dave Pickerel saying you get rid of the bad stuff. Now you buy in lots from MGP. Like, what do you do with the bad stuff?
There's a couple things we can do with the bad stuff. It depends how bad it is and what we really have demand for. And so in the baking world, there is a very large demand for bourbon vanilla. And so if you have bad bourbon, one thing you can do is you can ultra filter it, and then you can do a vanilla bean extract on it, and you'll get your money back. You know, that was something I did for a long time with it. But now it's so expensive, you can't even get your money back, you know. But eventually the price will meet the demand up there, and we'll be able to do that again. You know, there's always people that will buy alcohol at an industrial scale, specifically vinegar manufacturers, which is a really cool little fun fact. I haven't used that graveyard personally, but that is a popular one. You see a lot of people. Actually, this is really cool. So 5th generation distillers, this is Tito's Vodka down in Texas. So they do, you know, people talk a lot about shit about them. I met Tito in Vegas, man. He gave me his phone number. We banged. No, I'm kidding. We did not bang, but he gave me his phone number because we had the same type of still. And he lives out in he owns the biggest house in Lake Geneva. Isn't that funny? So he owns the biggest house in Lake Geneva, man. He's like, dude, he's from Milwaukee. So his family, his grandfather invented the trailer that transports cars that like are zigzag, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like the cars that are on inclines. Like if you're going to drive like 10 cars from one dealership to another.
Yeah.
So his grandfather invented that, and then they owned the patent, they owned the trailer, and so they had the rights for all of the movement of GM vehicles through the 80s. Wow. And then they still own the patent mark on it, trademark on it. And so
wow.
Is that crazy? It's just a fun fact about Tito. He's a wild man. Or his last name's Beverage. It's not spelled
Tito Beverage.
It's Bertito Beverage. Isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
Dude, Bert.
Truly
I was about to tell you Bert's secret. I can't tell you secret. He'll tell you soon. But so down there, like a lot of people give them shit because like, oh, that stuff just comes from Indiana. And it's like, yeah, it does, by the rail car. They ship rail cars down there. And it's unloaded, and it's actually, these stills are wild that they built. It's all off his original design from when he was distilling. I think he was in the UAE or Saudi Arabia, but he was a consultant, a geological seismologist consultant. So he's working in petroleum, and he was shooting waves in the mountains to see for like ore deposits for mining. And so in the time, I think this is in Kuwait or UAE or Saudi Arabia, you couldn't drink. And so they'd go out camping trips, and they'd all bring moonshine that they made. You know, one guy brought, you know, bourbon that he put wood chips in, and somebody else brought rum, and Tito brought vodka. And that's where Tito's vodka actually came from. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. Then he came back, basically bankrupted himself 4 times trying to get it going. And after about 20 years of working the brand, it took off. It's meteoric. Now it's, you know, the most successful in the world. Really cool, right? Why was I talking about Tito?
I asked him, what do you do with crap bourbon or rye?
Generation. So the stills that they use out there, he came back and he built one at his house down in Texas, and then he built another one. And so if you can get in there, I don't think they definitely don't do tours at all. But I've been in there twice, and if you can get in there, there's tons of these pot stills, and they bring it in by the rail car. And I don't think they don't buy from MGP. They buy from tons of different people, because I saw tons of different rail cars in the yard. But they unload, they put it in, and they take a pretty gnarly head and tails cut on it. I mean, it's a pretty narrow cut to make for them to make. I thought it would have been a lot wider, but they actually do a heads and tails cut on it, and all the heads and tails go back into rail cars, and they're sold to a vinegar manufacturer.
Wow.
Yeah, and so Tito's is essentially zero waste, which is really impressive. at their scale. It's wild. You know, there's also like I bought a lot of stuff in a bankruptcy. And so one thing that you can do is you can tote it. And so like if there's like 10 things that don't meet our spec, we can just put them all in a tote, and then we can give people who want to put in bids, send out samples, you know, and then just move the whole tote. And so we've done that. We've sold a lot of totes of whiskey to people. Stuff from Distiller and stuff from MGP that just need to move on. You know, and people, you know, one man's trash, another man's treasure. You know, you can rebarrel that, you can blend that, you can flavor that, you know, make vinegar out of it, whatever you want to do. You know,
do you have
anything
NDAs related to those sales? I assume.
Yeah, we NDA everything. My brother's a corporate attorney, and so we believe. Unfortunately, I don't believe this, but we NDA everything. Unfortunately, I wish I could talk about.
I understand. I understand that the industry sort of has to run that way to a certain degree.
I mean, it wants to, but it's not to its benefit. Transparency is. You know,
I mean, consumers. Yeah, I mean, the consumer, especially anybody who's watching this right now, is like, they want to know. Like, they want to know what's up, and give me the dirt. Which, I mean, I've learned not dirt, but like so much about the industry from our chats. Like, we've chatted 4 or 5 times now, but we have just learned so much about how a distillery operation actually works. Because there's the like public facing, like, oh, here's how it works, but then you're like, oh yeah, but here's how it actually works, and that's been so fun, like such a fun journey, and I'm stoked that folks from Nation here got to get a little peek behind the curtain. Whoops, just spilling stuff, but peek behind the curtain from you tonight. So definitely don't we're over an hour now, so I don't want to keep you. Like I said, I'm be respectful with the kids, and I empathize, deeply empathetic. Anybody else have any questions here before we let Nick go? Let me just scan the chat here.
Thanks for having me, dude. This is great. I always love getting up with the Nation. Seeing you. Great.
I just want to spend like every day. I should just work remotely, I think, and sell coffee remotely, and then just taste whatever you're working on a daily basis. That would.
Well, I got some things I'd like you to taste. Maybe Neat Nation wants some. Who knows? Yeah, I got a couple things for you if you want to make a trip out. I know how you feel about obnoxious barrel finishes, so I got a whole lineup of obnoxious.
That's not true. So let me be clear about what I said in that video, which I don't know if you watched it, but what I said was I actually like them. I said I like them, and we've released a lot of them. I was just processing the massive advent of finishing. Like, because you got to own with me, like, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Like, the general acceptance of barrel finishing at this scale is very. You couldn't have convinced somebody 6 years ago that it would be like this.
I would have told. I wanted it to be like this 6 years ago. We are the luckiest people in the world that this is happening, because
they're big used cooperage people.
Yeah, we love it. I mean, I love it. And we do. The other thing too is we have the freedom to do a lot of stupid shit, because it's. I mean, so we've done a lot of bitters in house, and so a lot of that is those are like some of the things I want to show. I don't know if I should say it aloud or I should wait, but I got a couple.
Do whatever you want.
I want you to take a look at chocolate barrel finish, and so it's a cocoa bitter. It's like a candy bar. It's crazy.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. Then we have some corn whiskey, some American corn. Of course, I got I have the second generation, the Spaniard, but that's going to need a little more time because it's the second generation. We've also, this is kind of fun news. I've been working with ISC. They still refuse to make us the barrels, but because we got that double gold, they've agreed to work with us on custom staves. And so similar, we're going to be able to do barrel finishes for the rest of the lot that'll be custom staved. And so we can deliver, to the market in larger batches not the Spaniard, but a Spaniard-like product, which is going to be really at age and at proof, which is what was important to me.
Sick. That is awesome.
And you know how I feel about all those makers. I'm a FAU fan, so working with Amy at the lab has just been a treat. I mean, it's been we got 3 samples down right now of that of different stave tests. And so I'll taste them again next week and the following, and then we'll decide what range we liked and which profile we liked, and then we'll extrapolate that into a vat and see how that goes. I love, finishing. Like, the thing with finishing cast is, like, not a lot of people are making like weird bitters, like spiced cherry bitters or orange bitters, weird stuff at their distillery. And so we love it, because we can buy those barrels, we can make those barrels ourselves. But the big thing is consumers are more willing to take a chance on the stuff that we do now. And 5 years ago, they were not. They weren't.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say like I'm the best barrel finisher and I started this craze and blah, blah, I drive a Dodge Stratus. Not the case. But people are more willing to try some of the stuff that we like, those, like the Kool-Aid port finishes that we do. No one ever would have touched. No one ever would have touched those.
So good though.
They're so good. Yeah. Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but our standard identity is a whiskey from a rye mash. It's because of the used cooperage. But the TT, anytime a straight whiskey does a port finish or a PND finish or anything, they have to make a whole new label for it, or a cigar with, finish. Well, for us, we only finish and use cooperage. And so it's like used and new, but it doesn't matter if it's used and new, it's whiskey from a rye mash. And so we like for instance, like the ones that you've looked at, right? That's a new barrel. It's still going to come in the Limousine Rye label. When we do a port finish, we don't have to do Limousine Rye port finish. We can just put in our Limousine Rye label. And so that allows us to have a lot more flexibility. We don't have the advantage of sales of being like, it's whiskey, it's a straight rye. It's going to taste just like pepper. We don't have the ease of that crutch of the standard identity, but we have the flexibility in this, wild, wild west of finishing where, we have 10, 11 different finishes we do in our single barrel program all under the same label.
That's pretty cool.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good answer to the question. And I think everybody, like a lot of comments in the chat are like, yeah, I'm going to rewatch this tomorrow because I just want to digest it all. And yeah, I'm stoked to get out there and taste. Terrence calls out the Dodge Stratus, which was a hilarious reference. I don't know how you pulled that or why you pulled that, but I found it hilarious myself.
That's like my man thing. I think if Will Ferrell that be, I drive a Dodge Stratus. Now that I'm a dad.
Definitely here for that. Definitely. All right. Well, Nation, we're going to sign out. I'll chat with Nick myself here for just a second, but thank you all for joining. If you haven't already, you need to buy some Dancing Goat stuff because it's delicious. And if you really want to wait, we will be releasing some through Sealbox to members of Nation. You can check out our Patreon down below. That's how you get first access. We got this French oak toasted Limo Rye, which is going to be, I mean, we're at 7 years on this, right? We're going to be close to 8 probably by the time it's
it'll be 8 in July.
Heck yeah. I think that's going to be singing when we get just a couple more months of heat on it.
Yeah, it's already, like you mentioned last time we talked, the sweetness has started to come through.
Yeah. The sweetness was a big level up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'll put that high in the rick house and we'll get some heat to her, and I think we'll really start to see that toasty toast come out.
Sweet. And then Nick alluded to it, but I gave Nick a barrel that I had gotten from Traverse City that we aged honey in for a coffee project, my day job. And I was like, Nick, I have a honey barrel for you. And he thought I was talking about like a bottle from a barrel that was really good, like a honey barrel. And then we showed up to like swap some stuff. And I gave him a barrel full of like a barrel covered in honey. And he's like, dude, I didn't know this is what you were talking about.
That was the best thing you ever could give me. I was thrilled with it. Absolutely thrilled.
So he filled it with rye, and we'll figure out what to do with it, and hopefully bring it to Nation because that'll be fun.
The color on it is wild. It's so thick and golden. It's just it's beautiful. It's
Dessert.
absolutely
Definitely going to be a dessert whiskey, I think. But
all right,
y'all.
I'll get samples prep for you.
Sweet. We'll chat about how to catch up soon. But Nation, thank you guys for watching. Tune in every Thursday. Most Thursdays, not every Thursday, most Thursdays. But hopefully we'll have Brian back on soon. Again, big condolences to the Bikey family with the passing of Brian's dad. So make sure y'all send Brian some love in the DMs on Instagram at Abandoned Bourbon. It was not great. Sorry, surprise. But yeah, he did lose his dad this week.
I'll definitely reach out. Love you, brother.
I appreciate that. But y'all have a good night. Keep it neat. See ya.
Hell yeah.